Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning.
I'd like to call our Nash County Board of Commissioners meeting for April the 6th to order at this time. As you can see, for the ones viewing in, we're doing things quite a bit different, as everyone is. I would just say, boy, things have really changed since our last meeting on March the 5th for our first of the month meeting for the Board of Commissioners. First, I would like to outline the format for today. You can see there are only 9 of us in the chamber properly placed in accordance with what we have learned to date. Our county staff are in various places in the building and will enter the chamber as needed. The public that may have an item on the agenda today are out in the large hallway properly spaced and will enter the chamber when needed and as directed by a staff member. The public podium has been located further back up the aisle and will be used by any speaker. There should be some wipes, or I think what we have done now is our manager is going to wipe it down after each speaker leaves the mic. Item 5 under the agenda, which is for public comments, they will be received, and we have gotten approval for this from the Institute of Government by email only, and should be sent in 30 minutes before our meeting by 8:30 each Monday until further notice. I will read these emails using the same guidelines we would use for a public appearance as outlined in our public comment policy, which are items 1 through 7. And they need to be, as before, about no more than 5 minutes long. We are now on item number 2 on our agenda. And each month, the Board of Commissioners has a prayer by a commissioner. And during this time, you're welcome to join us in that prayer. You're welcome to use the time for a moment of silence, or you're welcome to use it for your own prayer, whichever you so to choose. And of course, we all know we're in a time when we can all use all the prayer that we have time to give or take time to give. Mr. Belfield has told me previously that he is always ready to pray, and I'm sure he is this morning. And if he's okay, I'd like to ask him to lead us in the invocation at this time, if you wish to stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us all stand. Our Heavenly Father, in the name of your Son, Jesus, we gather here today, first of all, just thanking you for this beautiful day. A day we had not seen before, but a day that we have many challenges facing us as a county, state, nation, and even in the world. But Father, you know you said in your word that you would put no more on us than we can bear. We believe that, and we believe that you're going to give us the answer to this coronavirus, that we can wipe it out. The knowledge is here, and I know you're going to touch those who can get it done. Now, Father, as we continue with our meeting here today, we pray for love, we pray for patience, we pray for kindness. And above it all is love, loving one another, helping one another. And this is why we are here today. Now bless us as we continue with this meeting. These blessings we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Mr. Outlaw?
Join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're now on item number 4, which is approval of the minutes for the previous meetings. We had 3 in March. One was our regular meeting on March the 5th. One was a recess meeting on March the 11th. And then we had a special call joint meeting with the Nash Rocky Mount School Board, which took place actually on April the 1st. I'm sure you've had a moment to review those previously. if there are any corrections to the minutes or any additions that need, I would entertain those at this time, or if not, I'd entertain a motion to approve all three of them. And,
Motion to approve.
all right, we have a motion by Commissioner Combs to approve the three meetings.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Wells. Any questions on those motions? Seeing none, all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Minutes stand approved. Thank you. We did have one public comment to come in, email, and at this time, it was somewhat of a legal item in nature, so rather than read it myself, I have asked our manager if he would mind reading this one, since he also is an attorney and probably will understand it just a little bit better than I would. So, Mr. Lamb, if you would read that public comment we had come in, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we have a email public comment from on the letterhead of Blue Ridge Environmental Defense Fund, dated April 1, 2020, addressed to Robbie Davis, chairman, and all the commissioners are copied. Dear Chairman Davis and members of the commission, I am writing you today on behalf of the Blue Ridge Environmental Defense League, BREDL, and its chapter, Nash Stop the Pipeline, NSTP, to request that you take action to protect landowners, farmers, and all residents of Nash County. As you know, on March 20th, 2020, the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration issued an official notice helping hazardous material transporters and pipeline operators prepare for the spread of COVID-19 by easing staff training and qualification requirements. Specifically, the directive relaxes operator qualifications, control room management, and random drug testing pursuant to 49 CFR subsection 199. PHMSA Associate Administrator Mayberry's notice effective March 20th states, this notice advises operators affected by the national emergency that PHMSA does not intend to take any enforcement action with regard to OQ, which is operator qualifications, and CRM, control room management requirements, and will consider exercising its enforcement discretion with regard to Part 199 drug testing requirements. Further, for interstate operators regulated by state authorities, PHMSA will not object to waivers, special permits, stays of enforcement, or similar measures granted by state authorities to pipeline operators for noncompliance due to COVID-19 with state regulations equivalent to the federal regulations. What this indicates is that the principal oversight agency responsible for safe operation of pipeline counters the loss of work hours by reducing training and enforcement. This is a flagrant disregard of public safety sanctioned by callous exploitation of the genuine public health threat presented by COVID-19. It is unacceptable. It demonstrates additional reasons to oppose pipelines through our communities. 8 permits to construct the proposed ACP have been vacated or rescinded by the courts. 1 additional case is before the Supreme Court. The rush to construct was halted in December 2018. The unneeded project is over 2 years behind schedule. Nonetheless, the pipeline companies still press hastily to build the pipeline in spite of the harm it has done and will continue unless prevented. One of the harms I can report to you is immediate. Over the last few days, I have been harassed by Dominion attorneys to allow out-of-state assessors onto my property and even into my home as part of the ongoing eminent domain process. The risk presented by COVID-19 virus matters little when it suits them. There is no excuse for their behavior. Chairman Davis, I hereby request that the Nash County Board of Commissioners stand up for its citizens and move from a neutral position and pass a resolution against this harmful and dangerous project. Respectfully, Marvin Winstead, 549 Sandy Cross Road, Nashville, North Carolina, 27856. And his email address, marwinstead@gmail.com. That concludes it.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Of course, it is the policy of the Board of Commissioners not to take action on any public comment at the time that it's given. We will certainly take this under advisement, and I will be back in touch with Mr. Winstead in a pretty short order of time. Do we know if the second request is coming, or?
Ms. Schatzer was speaking with him to
Okay.
see if we could move his back to a later date,
Okay,
but,
I'm gonna pause just a minute and see where we're at with that. I don't want to overlook anyone.
okay.
Okay. We'll just be sure we get in touch with him. Please. If we'll be sure we get in touch with that gentleman and get his comments condensed to writing, even if we need to do it for him, we'd certainly be glad to take those under advisement. All right, now we're on item number 6, which is a report on the detention center that we do each month. We had committed to the public that we'd be doing this monthly. And at this time, I'd ask Mr. Jonathan Boone, our facilities director, to enter the room. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Morning.
I'll wipe down the podium.
Earlier, presentation today,
Thank you.
and I will give you some extra copies with the clerk for media or slides to them after the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this morning, provide you a brief update on our efforts at the detention facility since our last report, or my last report back on March 5th. We'll say that facility maintenance staff has continued to be busy. Certainly a lot of work to do here in the county, but as my report will show today, our efforts have slowed considerably at the detention facility. I may not have slides. Jonathan, there we go.
There you go.
All right. All right, so just to remind you, as far as funding provided in the FY capital budget, FY 2020 capital budget for improvements at the detention facility, we began the fiscal year with approximately $550,000 allocated for improvements at the facility. As you will recall, at your meeting last month on the 5th, you approved an additional $500,000 to be used towards improvements at the facility, some of which would include improvements related to the recommendations in the jail needs assessment. And then we had 2 additional projects that were included in the capital improvement program, plumbing improvements in the north-south block, elevator modernization at the sheriff's office. Those items totaled about $242,000. Those 2 projects have been put on hold. Those were the funds that were allocated this fiscal year. As I've done each month, just want to share with you our expenses to date, and I've included, again, the numbers from each report, just to give you an idea of how expenses have progressed. Unless there's specific questions, I will just point to the total amount of funding either spent or committed, and you will see at the report that I presented in January, the county had committed about $347,849 for improvements. The following month, that number had increased to $542,211. Keep wanting to go the wrong direction. In March, last month's report, $632,233. And as of this past Friday, county committed funds in the total amount of $647,989,000. And the item that I will point out to you there is, if you remember the number I just gave you for March, the difference between the amount of funds committed in March and April is approximately $15,756 in the last 31 days. Items that we focused our attention on since I met with you last month, or reported last month. We continue to work on items that date back to the December 10th inspection report that we received from Department of Health and Human Services. And the elements we primarily focused on were the addition of some smoke detectors that staff there had asked to be installed, and contractor was in this past month to install those. It was 2 new smoke detectors were added to the system, and 1 existing detector was adjusted, its location adjusted. And then there's some energy recovery fans on the roof of the jail that we've been working on that continue to require some time and energy to locate parts in order to repair those. And some we received, but we're continuing to work on those. Second item we focused on is repainting the ceiling and some of the walls in the kitchen and the area immediately adjacent to the kitchen and 2 bathrooms. And then there were some wall panels, FRP panels or fiberglass reinforced panels in the kitchen need to be repaired. Those were replaced in the past 30 days. And then there were a couple other miscellaneous items that we focused our attention on. So real quickly, the first item there you'll see is the jail kitchen. Again, we repainted the kitchen. You can see a lot of time and attention was focused on the ceiling in the kitchen. You can see the sheen from the lights on that new paint. But that work has been completed, and it's a little more difficult to see, but again, on the walls, those white panels or those fiberglass reinforced panels, you've probably seen those in other kitchen applications or restaurants. We had a couple of those that had been damaged, and we had the contractor replace those.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Bill.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
Go back to that photo again. Is that after painting or before?
That is after painting. That's why you see that shine on the ceiling.
Okay.
Showing that new paint.
All right.
I think, Mr. Belfield, what you're seeing there, it looks spotty, but I think you're seeing shadows from the lights on it, if that's your
That's
question.
why I want to ask a question,
Yeah.
to see if there's a reflection.
Right, they are shadows and off in the lights is what I'm seeing there.
All right. The next item that we've worked on over the past month, as you recall, quite a bit of time and energy has been focused on the fencing along the exterior exercise yards, and some of the fasteners that the contractor had used when installing the reinforcement on that project. I believe when they used the device to install those, they had, kind of technical term, over-torqued some of those fasteners. They had twisted them just with the driver they were using had over-torqued those fasteners, and we'd had, I'd say, 12.5 or so that we had retrieved. And I reached out to the contractor, and they have come back out, and we initially had fasteners installed every 12 inches along that support, and you can see that about in the middle of that photo, and they've come back and added, now we have fasteners every 6 inches, and they use a different method to install those fasteners to keep from over-torquing those. So we have twice as many fasteners as was originally spec'd for the project, so I feel confident that we shouldn't have any issues with those fasteners moving forward. I also wanted to update you. You may recall that the commissioners approved a security enhancement project with Tyco or Johnson Controls to add approximately 54 cameras, and now we're up to 58 cameras at the detention facility. And based on an update from Johnson Controls, we expect them to be in the facility the middle of this month, starting Monday the 13th, starting to install the conduit that they will need to run the cabling for those cameras. So it's been a long time coming. That project was originally approved, as I recall, back in either October or November. But again, we expect to see work begin on that middle of this month.
How long do you expect that to take?
Really, it's going to be a function of access to the facility. I believe they have all the materials. It does help that the population at the jail is down. That is a silver lining, so they'll be able to work a little quicker. But I would think we're looking at least 90 to 120 days. But we'll be asking the contractor to keep us updated, provide us with a project schedule. But they have ordered all the materials, so again, we're hopeful that we can capitalize on the reduced jail population. That will allow them to move a little more quickly, be a little more nimble while they're on site. But we will have a guard with them while they are working. The other project that we're working on, I know you will recall that we currently have a mobile freezer parked behind the jail due to the cooler freezer in the kitchen, which has failed. And as part of the needs assessment, Mosley Architects had a special consultant that focuses on that type of equipment and operations. And they had recommended that we reconfigure the existing cooler freezer now that needs to be replaced. So I reached out to that firm and engaged them to assist me in preparing a technical specification to replace that unit. This is a draft document here, and as recently as last week, the consultants provided me with the name of a couple of vendors that likely have the capacity to do this kind of work. Effectively, we're going to have to take out the existing cooler, which is a modular unit, and then replace that unit. One thing I will note, and I do not have a picture of the old cooler freezer here, but you'll see that this is the cooler, this is the freezer. It's being reconfigured. Currently, the cooler freezer runs kind of north-south. Cooler is north-south, and the freezer's behind it. We're adjusting that, and then we're allocating additional space to the freezer. And again, that's based on a recommendation from the consultant. So again, we have a bid document prepared, and we're looking to schedule a pre-bid conference. We'll confess a little uncertain about how the current situation that we're dealing with, COVID-19, may impact the availability of contractors to do this work. I will be reaching out to them this week. I'd hoped to do so late last week, but I was unable to. But we'll be focusing my time and energies on that project this week to get some idea of how soon we can move forward with advertising this project. I mentioned earlier in my presentation the December 10th inspection letter. I want to provide you an update on our efforts there. If you had a copy of the report that I presented last month, you may recall there were 10 items that remained outstanding from that report from December. We have addressed 4 of those. Again, 3 of those related to some smoke detectors. I forget what the 4th item was. We're down to 6 now. But again, one of the items that we're currently focusing on is the freezer. That's probably the most significant item that remains on that list. And the other are those energy recovery units that I mentioned on the top of the jail that we're working to secure the parts and to return those back to service. The other items that remain outstanding from the report are primarily items that were addressed during the jail needs assessment and will be addressed more specifically in this next phase of the project as we begin into the design phase of that project. And we have an action item on the agenda later today specifically related to that item. But again, these are items related to the portion of the jail that is currently vacant. The linear portion of the jail, primarily the former juvenile section, and the north, south, and east, west blocks in the facility. Also, each month I provide you an update on work orders, outstanding work orders we have at the jail. And again, just a quick recap. If we go back to January, you recall that we had 44 work orders, pending work orders at my report in January. In February, that number was 26. Last month on March 5th, we reduced that number to 22, and this month we stand again at 22. You will see I've itemized those there. 6 of those 22 items are new requests. 7 are on hold pending feedback either from the sheriff's office or due to access limitations at the facility due to COVID-19. Certainly they're being very judicious in terms of allowing contractors and staff in and out of the facility, and certainly want to respect that. And then finally, there are 9 work orders that, as I mentioned earlier, on hold, and that's primarily in the older portion of the jail that are currently vacant. Finally, items moving forward. Each month, I also provide you an update on these items. Hopefully, we'll be able to start next month, first of next month, if we can make significant headway in terms of our response to COVID-19. But we have a checklist that we have finalized between facilities maintenance and the sheriff's office. And again, we're looking to hopefully complete our first inspection the first Friday in May 1st. We've continued to inspect the smoke purge fan control system. We've completed 2 of those inspections, one on February 6th, and most recent on March 10th, and we'll have a 3rd inspection next week. We're continuing to work with Johnson Controls, trying to arrange for an annual inspection, as we do with our fire inspection panel. We haven't made quite as much headway on that as I would like, but again, we are inspecting the system monthly. And then finally, we're committed to continue to work forward with the Sheriff's Office to identify and implement economically viable facility-related improvements and needed security enhancements geared toward providing additional housing capacity in the facility and to address the inmate classification needs that they have in the facility. But again, we're also looking at that through the lens of COVID-19. So that concludes my report. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions of Mr. Boone by Commissioner?
I did have a question on our page 3. It's about slide number 5. Is the capital improvements to date on the April chart. The 211,000 under other that's still been committed, what does that primarily consist of?
Let's see. Can you, are we looking at the same slide?
In the,
table?
yes, in the table,
That's
the
it.
other column, next to last, in the middle, the
Yeah,
committed funds.
so recall again, I mentioned the security enhancement system project. The initial contract was $182,500. And then we have issued a change order for an additional 4 cameras, one in dorm 4, one in dorm 5, and one in each of the isolation cells for an additional $6,651. So roughly $190,000 of that $211,000 is related to the security system enhancements. And the other 20, I do not know what those are off the top of my head, the various miscellaneous improvements that do not necessarily fall in one of those other categories that I've broken out in that table.
Just a comment and a concern I have. You know, you said it would take 90 to 120 days to get this camera system completed and installed. In the meantime, we're spending, looks like to me, $140,000 a month for outside facilities for our inmates to stay. So it's costing us a lot of money the longer we wait. Is everybody on the ball to get this done? Because I think our main goal would be to get these inmates back in our jail.
Certainly, I can't speak for the sheriff's office. You may want to pose that question to them during their report. I certainly think we're all committed to getting that project done as quickly as we can. I think the contractor understands the significance of that project. But you know, the other comment I would make is we currently have authorization for 172 beds in the facility. I do not know what the count is today for inmates. I believe it's less than 70. Certainly, I think the
65.
additional
65.
65? 65 of 172 beds are occupied. Certainly, I think the cameras will provide the sheriff's office or the detention facility with another tool to use to manage that facility. But again, that would probably be a question better posed to the sheriff's office in terms of to what degree they feel that the completion of that project will allow them to take full advantage of the 172 beds that we currently have available and any additional beds that we may be able to bring online if we decide to do so.
Are they shifting inmates around so you can continue working?
I think we
Again,
need
that would
to,
probably be a question better posed to the sheriff's office, but I will tell you that my understanding is primarily inmates are being housed in dorms 1, 2, and 3, and the special housing unit, SHU, is the acronym we're using now, the former female lockdown unit. And it's my understanding that dorms 4 and 5, which have been reduced from 26 beds to 18 beds, are being used as It's like medical isolation cells. There's currently 2 inmates, 1 male, 1 female, I believe, that were arrested, and Chief Deputy Medina mentioned in our conference call yesterday related to COVID-19 that were intercepted on a return trip back from New York. They've been quarantined, 1 inmate in dorm 4, 1 inmate in dorm 5, to make sure that they're asymptomatic before they're moved back into the general population. But no, primarily 4 and 5 have remained offline with the exception of its current use as a medical isolation unit.
The sheriff is going to be here himself in just a minute.
Yeah, I understand
We
that,
can
but
ask him those questions.
I thought he would know to keep
Right.
from slowing the work down.
Yep.
Well, the work is moving on.
Well, again, you'll see our expenses from last month to this month have only increased $15,000. Roughly $6,000 of that was related to repainting the kitchen ceiling, walls, replacing those fiber reinforced panels, and then some other miscellaneous improvements, some plumbing-related items, electrical items. But if the next area in the jail, if we were to collectively decide that that's the direction we want to go, would be juvenile and the east-west block. Those would be the sections we could bring online the quickest. That would be an additional 51 beds. That would bring our total number of beds available. Again, if the decision was made to use those beds, I believe 223. But again, we currently have 172 beds, and we're using 65.
Basically, what he's saying, Mr. Combs, is the cameras are not the holding up utilizing a lot more of the jail. So it would be very important to get it done as quick as we can, but that's not really what's costing us the funds right this moment. Other questions of Mr. Boone? Thank you, Mr. Boone.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 7, and the Board of Commissioners had asked the sheriff to make an appearance this morning himself rather than a staff member, and at this time, I would ask Sheriff Stone to come into chambers to make his report. You're right good at that, Mr. Lamb.
Got it.
Thank
Major
you.
Strickland, a specific request was made of the sheriff to make his report this morning himself. Is he not here?
He's dealing with COVID-19 issues.
I understand that, but the commissioners asked him specifically to be here. He assured me as late as yesterday he would be here himself, and we really want him to do the report because we have questions for him.
Right. He sent me.
Is your report going to be on operations only?
Yes, sir.
Well, please let him know that the Board of Commissioners is very disappointed that he didn't honor the obligation that he made to the board. It was very important to us to have him here this morning. But proceed, and I hope it is on operations and not some of the things that we've heard in the past.
It's operations.
Thank you.
Thank you. And good morning. Misty Strickland, Major Operations, Nash County Sheriff's Office, which includes detention. It's very brief. It's just a recap what we've already talked about in the past. We're compliant. We were compliant back in February with the state mandated issues. We're awaiting cameras right now, which Mr. Boone just talked about. And again, the sheriff has invited each of you to shadow a detention officer so you can see the operation side of the house, and you may end up understanding a little bit more about operations. The safety and security falls under the sheriff, and that's all I have.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions of Major Strickland?
Yeah, is,
Mr.
just
Combs?
a question.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'm sorry. The main thing that I'm concerned about is the fact that we're spending this $140,000 a month to keep inmates somewhere else. Now, I know there's some problem, but we've been approved for 172, and you alluded to 80% of that, 132. Well, that's about how many we got, and we're spending money to keep them somewhere else. my thinking is, and I hope you take this back to the sheriff, my thinking is that it's kind of like having a house, but you go somewhere and rent a motel room every night. And I just think we need to stop spending this money frivolously.
Okay.
And that's my opinion. And we can get these cameras in there, or we can not get them in there. We still approve for 172. What I don't understand is why we're not doing that.
So spending money frivolously is not coming from us. We asked for assessment back in January for this jail facility. We started back in January with these problems and said it was critical back in January. It was told to me specifically that we manufactured a crisis. We did not. We have been saying what we have been saying the whole time. The 172-bed full capacity, you can't operate full capacity. You just can't do that. There's so many issues involved with operating a facility. You can't have an inmate in every single bed. The female side is in a section that is no longer operable under the bar section. So it's in another section of the facility that you will have to have direct supervision because there's no cameras. So that's 4 shifts of 3 personnel, and we have that. It's just you want females to look after females and to do direct observation on females. The camera situation, we requested in the beginning last year. It's unfortunate that it has taken this long for whatever reason. I'm not putting blame on anyone. We are where we are. We are at where we're at. This situation is what it is. And we have been taking the brunt of the financial side of the house, the sheriff's office. So we understand the monetary problems. We understand that fully. The sheriff's office is taking the brunt of this. We want this facility up to par just as much as each one of you. But until the sheriff feels that the safety and the security is taken care of and that we can operate and fully staffed and fully, our detention officers are our main concern. We do not want to put inmates in a facility that the sheriff does not feel is safe and secure. And until the cameras get there, that is his stand. And the linear section's offline.
Is that the only thing holding up?
Yes,
Getting them
sir.
all back in here is
Yes,
camera?
sir.
Do you
Yes.
have female detention officers to look after the females?
It's 4 shifts. So you would have to pull all the females to work that section. And there again, you don't want male officers watching female inmates
Well, that's
without
what I'm saying. You
cameras.
don't have enough female officers.
We have,
Mr. Combs, to bring the females back, do we have somewhere else? It would take 1 female per shift, which has been confirmed by the state. I think we're getting into something is the reason we needed the sheriff here this morning.
Okay.
Exact reason we needed
I'm
to.
just,
we have 18 female detention officers right now and 19 male detention officers. And then we have a whole other side of the detention facility that we have to operate. This is on a closed-off section. So just because you have an area to put them in, you just don't want one officer in that closed-off section where they have to go through these locked doors, and it would take time. If that officer got jumped by these inmates in an open dorm setting, the sheriff does not feel it's safe and adequate right now. And that is why, again, I wish that each one of you would come down and shadow a detention officer. And some of these questions may be answered on a shift.
my only thing is I just can't see us spending $140,000 a month when we are approved to put them in there. And it's just incomprehensible that we got to spend that much money, and especially, and then during these times right here. And I just don't believe we're good stewards of the taxpayers' money when we're spending that much money when we could put them in our facility. I just think there's a whole lot of important things, that I just have a problem with spending money, like I say, renting that hotel room when you got a house of your own.
I will stress again, we started this conversation
If I
in
could interrupt
January.
you, Major, we're in a public setting, and I'm really not going to allow it to go
Right.
to he said, she has, back and forth. Commissioners know the facts very well, Y'all know the facts very well. Unfortunately, they don't mesh up, but we depend on the state for guidance, so I appreciate your report this morning.
Thank you, sir. Anything else?
Any other questions?
I was just kind of inquiring as to why we got,
Well, that's why you asked
That's
me,
all.
that's why you asked me to have the sheriff here this morning, sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Major.
May I clarify something? It's just that several things.
I'd rather you not, but if you feel a dire
It's several
need to.
things. Number one, the camera project was first under the sheriff's office, and after 4 or 5 months of no movement, we asked Jonathan Boone to take it over. So he
Mr.
is.
Lamb, I think I'd rather just leave it where we're at.
He
if
has
it's
worked
okay
as
with
hard
you.
as he can to get that project going.
The board-
And that is not a necessary,
The board fully knows
Item,
that,
yeah.
Mr. Lamb, but I
It got
appreciate it.
cut from the courthouse camera system, and we asked in January. We started with an assessment in January.
Major, I
Yes,
don't
sir.
mean to interrupt you, but I don't see any progress
I
being
know.
made here this morning.
And I hope you all stay safe through this virus.
Thank you.
And anything you all can do, or anything we can do from the sheriff's standpoint, sheriff's office, just let us know, and we'll be here to help you.
One thing
So I
you can
appreciate
do,
each one of you.
if you would, is make sure when we asked him to appear, that he understands it means for him to appear.
It does. He got pulled away. You know, he's the sheriff of the county, and he got pulled away. So
Thank
he
you.
sent me the major of the operation. So I appreciate each one of you.
Well, I
Thank you.
appreciate you being here this morning.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we will now move on. We had 2 public hearings from the planning department, and my understanding is that we had a glitch by one of our news agencies, and we did not have the second notice of these 2 public hearings to appear in a local paper. I think our attorney advised me this morning that it would not be proper for us to move forward without that having taken place. I don't think it was an issue with staff. In fact, I was told it was not an issue with staff, that it was just a failure. And I certainly understand how a mistake can be made by anyone during the times that we're working through, because we're all working from home quite a bit. I'm sure that our newspapers are as well, and very unfortunate that this happened. Looking at the 2 rezoning requests, they don't seem to be time sensitive, I don't think, and I really hope they're not, and I want to apologize to the 2 applicants as it relates to these 2. We will get these properly advertised, and then we would have the 2 public hearings the next month, I'm sure. Mr. Lamb, been an attorney also, is there anything else I need to add about those 2 postponements of the public hearing?
did you state we'll do it at the next
I did,
monthly
sir.
meeting? That's
Yes.
fine.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
In going over those public hearings last night, I had some questions.
I think
about it too, but
several
we
of
don't
us
need
had
to
public
dis-
hearings.
We don't need to discuss them now.
Right.
We'll wait until we get to them.
Right.
And then I have some questions about at least one of them.
Right. I think several
possibly
commissioners
both
had
of them.
questions about them. But it wouldn't be proper with the applicant not being present for us to discuss them. I think we better done.
That was one of the reasons I was wondering why are we going through with it.
Right. Well, we will, we'll get the notices properly done, and then we will reschedule them for our first meeting in May. I'm now then moving beyond 8, moving beyond 9. I'm now on item 10, and I would call on Jonathan Boone to come back in the room and make this proclamation on North Carolina 811 safe digging. Welcome again, sir.
Thanks, sir. Again, as you indicated, have a proclamation we'd like the commissioners to approve designating April as Safe Digging Month. Have not had a chance to confirm this, but I know that Safe Digging Month initially started in 2008. I assume the county has recognized this month since 2008. But really, it's an initiative by NC811, which is kind of the clearinghouse here in North Carolina. They're part of the Common Ground Alliance, And each of those stakeholders every year are encouraged to promote safe digging and to use one voice and select 1 month to promote safe digging. And April is typically a time across the nation when we're starting to come out of the winter. People are coming outside, starting to do more work. And certainly with our stay-at-home orders, I'm not sure about you, but I've been taking care of more items around the house as of late. Hadn't included any digging, but if I do, I need to call 811. So this proclamation is intended to encourage first recognition of that service and safe digging in our county. So I'll read a couple of lines from the proclamation. Will not read the entire proclamation, and then be glad to answer any questions you may have. So the proclamation begins, Nash County designated the month of April 2020 as North Carolina 811 Safe Digging Month. Whereas as utility owners, excavators, designers, and homeowners work to keep pace with North Carolina's economic development, it is important to minimize damages to underground utility lines, danger to workers and the general public, environmental impact, and the loss of utility services to the citizens of North Carolina. And whereas North Carolina 811, a utility service notification center and leader in education, celebrates its 42nd year of continuous service to the state, is key to preventing injuries and damages when excavating. And whereas this unique service provides easy one-call notification about construction and excavation projects that may endanger workers and jeopardize utility lines while promoting workplace and public safety, reducing underground utility damage, minimizing utility service interruptions, and protecting the environment. And I'll skip the next three. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Nash County Board of Commissioners has designated the month of April 2020 as North Carolina 811 Safe Digging Month to encourage all excavators and homeowners, which is important to note, of Nash County to contact 811 either by dialing 811 or by contacting NC 811 via their webpage, which is nc811.org, at least 3 working days prior to digging in order to know what's below, to avoid injury, to protect the environment, prevent millions of dollars in damages, and to remind excavators that 3 working days' notice is the law, for safe digging is no accident, and that more information may be obtained by visiting www.nc811.org. And the only other item I'd like to clarify, just to dispel any myths, is the service is free. So there's no cost to the property owner. But if the property owner were to damage the utility without calling NC 811, they could potentially be charged with cost of repair. So there's no cost for the service other than your time. So we'd encourage all Nash County residents to take advantage of this service if they're doing any digging, even in their own yard. Safest thing to do is to call.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. I won't say that we have done this every month in the past. I don't think we have, but that's a fault of Nash County by not recognizing the importance of it. Maybe we're glad to have you with us now and fully understand it, even though all of us understand the proclamation and what the need is. I guess we're all more cognizant of it right this minute with the vast amount of work going on in the northern part of the county and the number of internets and phones we have damaged and the number of phone calls we've had. Sometimes it's unavoidable because some of our utilities may not know exactly where their lines are, but we certainly can do the best we can. But I appreciate you bringing that to us. Any commissioner wish to ask Mr. Boone any questions or make any comment at this time?
Yes.
Mr.
Is it
Belfield?
a requirement to mark utility lines before any digging is done?
Well, the law requires you to call the locating service, and they will notify the utility providers. And utility providers are given really given less than 3 days, about 2 days to come out and mark their locates. So it is an important question you're asking. Just because you call in NC 811 does not always guarantee that the provider will get out and mark their utilities. So even if you've called in locates, I'd encourage our residents to dig with some sense of trepidation. Dig carefully, because just because there's no marks on the ground doesn't mean there might not be a telephone line, a cable line, a power service, a water line where you're digging. But your best chance of having those utilities located is to call the service. They will notify the providers, and then the clock starts to tick on the utility providers to get out and market their services. Now, if a homeowner were to know where they're digging, there are some utilities there, they do not know exactly where they are located, and they've called in, and a locator has not come out to mark those utilities, again, whether it's the gas, where they have gas service, electric, water, cable, phone, they can turn around and call 811 again, and they will reach back out that utility provider to again make them aware of the locate ticket and try to encourage them to get by as quickly as they can. So it's not a guarantee, as Commissioner Davis mentioned, even on the Northern Ash Water System project. We've had utilities that be cut, even though locates have been called in. It's, the human error is a factor that we deal with, but your best chance of digging safely is by calling 811 and having the locates marked on your property.
Well, who's responsible if they hit and cut a line, a utility line?
If you have called in a locate to 811 and you cut a line, or a contractor cuts a line, and they have operated based on the locates on the ground and there's damage to the utility, then the contractor, the homeowner, would be held harmless. They have made their best effort to have the utilities located, and if the locator mismarks the utility in the ground, or they don't make it by within the time period allotted, and then the utility is damaged, then that becomes the responsibility of the utility provider. Now, that would be of little consolation to you if your electric service is underground and you happen to hit it as a homeowner and you end up in a hospital, and that would be a different conversation. But you have done your part as homeowner or contractor to call the clearinghouse and request that the utility provider come out and locate those utilities.
But look at the damage it could cause to the environment or even construction, homes and things, especially if it's a gas line. You may get an explosion.
Correct. So again, that's why 811
Which
is
is
encouraging
damage.
residents and contractors to call in before you do any work, 3 days before you do any work.
But my opinion is that if the owner of the lines don't respond in 3 days, then whoever is doing construction out there, digging, ought to have an instrument where they make sure that they know where they're going and that they'll miss those lines. That ought to be a part of the law of whatever ordinance.
I think that would be a little problematic for contractors, construction companies to have that level of expertise and that amount of equipment. But certainly your point's well taken. Even if you're digging, locates, no locates, you need to proceed cautiously, whether that's a contractor or whether that's a homeowner.
Well, proceeding cautiously and don't know what the line is.
If in doubt, my recommendation would be do not dig
I've
and call
seen-
811.
I've seen some where they weren't marked and they went out there guessing and cut the lines.
Correct. Now, it could be located and you
Just
still
lucky
cut the
it
line.
wasn't a gas line.
We have a lot in the ground this day and time.
Yeah.
There's more putting
It's
in
a
every
lot
year.
A lot of digging now, and we
Yes,
need
sir.
to see what the greatest solution to it.
There's a boring rig on
preventing-
Washington Street this week, working by the sheets coming into town. So there's more and more utilities going underground every day.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I'd entertain a motion to support the 811 digging proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any questions on that motion? Madam Clerk, you got who made the motion second?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Motion stands approved, and we thank you, Mr. Boone. And I believe you have item 11, so if you'll just stay put, we'll give Mr. Lamb a break.
Always want to take care of our county manager.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All right, our next item, you may recall, again, last month, commissioners continued their meeting to March 11th, at which time there was a presentation on the jail needs assessment that was completed by Mosley Architects. Based on the presentation on the 11th and directive provided by the county commissioners, staff issued a request for qualifications the following day, March 12th. due to the desire to move along with this project as expeditiously as possible. As Commissioner Cone mentioned earlier about the need or the desire to try to bring as many inmates back to our facility as quickly as we can. We wanted to move quickly. So the RFQ was issued on March 12th. We requested responses be returned to the county the following Wednesday week. That was March 25th at 12 p.m. In addition to disseminating the RFQ, we ran a advertisement in the Rocky Mount Telegram that weekend, so that was the 12th, I believe that was the 14th. And we also posted the RFQ on the North Carolina Department of Administration's hub website, again, to try to disseminate that RFQ far and wide for any firms that might be interested in assisting the county in addressing those improvements, whether renovation or expansion to the jail that was outlined in the jail needs assessment. Based on that RFQ, we received one response. We only received one response. As a result of the RFQ, that response was from Mosley Architects, who completed the needs assessment. So we convened a committee. Even though we had one response, we wanted to go through the submittal, make sure it addressed those items that were enumerated in the RFQ. The committee felt that the submittal did so. So based on that review and also on behalf of the committee, I had reached out to the references that Mosley Architects have provided. I think most of you know, and maybe even referenced at the meeting on March 11th, Mosley does a lot of work in North Carolina related to detention facilities. Reached out to 5 different references. 3 of those responded, and they were all very complimentary of the work that Mosley has completed in their counties. So based on the recommendation of the committee and the references that I spoke with or received correspondence from, requesting that the county commissioners authorize the county manager to engage Mosley Architects and to negotiate a proposed scope, fee, and schedule for the proposed renovation and expansion of the Nash County Detention Facility. Any questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
Any questions, Mr. Boone, on this item? And I will say I was not surprised that we only got one quote back in. Mosley, I think, has done about 83% of all the jails in North Carolina over the last 10-year period. We had Mosley do the preliminary report for us, which if I were in competition with Mosley, I would think they would have a starting gate a little bit ahead of me in the process of obtaining a job, I guess you'd say. Therefore, I probably wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to get a job that I may know that I couldn't get. I'm not sure that's what happened, but I know Mr. Boone did send it out specifically to 4 firms, and he may have said that, and then we had all the advertisements out, and it's just unfortunate that we did only get one back, but after discussing it with Sherstone and had his blessing to go ahead and move forward with awarding it to the Mosley firm, we did do the evaluation and really didn't see any reason not to move forward with just the one, which we are only required in this instance, unlike construction projects, to have one proposal is all we had to have. So I would certainly encourage the board to move forward with it as well. Any questions of Mr. Boone?
How many firms were contacted?
I think he stated that he contacted 4 personally, but then we did the legal.
Well, I thought maybe you got a response, but not fully as to maybe some inquiry from those 4, but I'm wondering if you contacted any more than 4.
I'll let Mr. Boone answer that.
I will say this work is somewhat specialized. You will not find a lot of firms that specialize in correctional facilities. But as Commissioner Davis indicated, I sent the RFQ specifically directly to 4 firms that I was able to identify within our region, not necessarily in our state, to do this type of work. Again, I did not mention, posted the RFQ on our website, ran an advertisement in the Rocky Mount Telegram, which firms nationally could access to. There are services that mine advertisements in public newspapers and make those available to their members, and then also publish the RFQ on the Department of Administration, the North Carolina Department of Administration's website. It is a fairly small, select group that even do this type of work. So it's not like, say, when we built the courthouse, which is, even though that's somewhat specialized, it's more of a building envelope, fits and finishes. The correctional field, that institutional field is a somewhat specialized discipline. So I was only able to identify 4 really on the East Coast that do this type of work. But in order to make sure I didn't miss anyone, which is why we posted the RFQ on our website, in the newspaper, and on the Department of Administration's website with the state of North Carolina.
Other questions? If none, I would call for a motion to approve the request.
So moved.
Have a motion by Ms. Wells, there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion stands approved.
Thank you, sir.
I detected a little bit of hesitation. Is there anything else we can say to make commissioners feel good that we are moving forward with it, or any questions that you got? Everybody good? Ms. Leggett, you're looking at me. Is anything else we can answer for you about that? Okay. Just want to be sure that everybody's on board. Thank you, Mr. Boone. That was item number 11. We'll move to item number 12, which follows up with action we just took. It would be a courthouse/sheriff expansion capital project ordinance. And as you recall, as soon as we agree to do something on a construction project, we need an ordinance in place so any monies that we can spend can be included in the financing that we may do for that. And I do not need to call Ms. Wood in the room because she has entered the room. And good morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Good morning.
The attached amendment is submitted for approval. This amendment is to update the courthouse expansion project to allow for replacement of an HVAC air conditioning unit system in the old courthouse, additional painting in the old courthouse, and to look at improvements to the handicap accessibility from the new courthouse to the old courthouse. The remaining funds will be transferred to the general fund to use for debt service on the courthouse in fiscal year 2021.
Any questions on this item? Not exactly what I thought it was, but any questions on this item?
Do you happen to know specifically what the improvements to the handicapped accessibility are?
We're looking at different options. I think there was a lift at one time that we were considering between the two, just because of the space that's
Right.
in there. It doesn't allow for much, but we're still looking at a possibility of a lift, just to make that accessibility a little bit better.
Okay.
It's stated sometimes that we don't have accessibility. We do indeed have accessibility all over the courthouse. It is a little bit unorthodox, I would say. It meets the code. And in the courthouse budget, we kept some money. So if we come up with a good solution, we may move forward with trying to do something.
I agree, we have accessibility.
Right.
Anything we can do to improve that would certainly be good.
Correct. All right, any other questions on this one? I need a motion to approve this capital project ordinance.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Outlaw, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Combs. All in favor of the motion, or first of all, any questions on the motion? All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion stands approved. Ms. Wood, you have item number 13 as well, if you'll move forward with that.
Okay, I have budget amendments presented for the board's consideration and approval. The first one is with emergency management. This amendment is for a supplemental grant from the State of North Carolina Department of Public Safety. These funds are to fund projects related to Homeland Security planning, operations, equipment purchases, training, and exercises, and other emergency management performance grant requirements. It's for $18,279. No county funds are required. The next item is with insurance proceeds. This budget amendment makes funding available from insurance proceeds received for roof repairs to the administrative building, roof repairs to the senior center, sheriff vehicle repairs, and environmental health vehicle repairs. It's a total of $8,444. No county funds are requested. The next item is with federal asset forfeiture funds. This budget amendment and insurance proceeds. This budget amendment makes funding available from insurance proceeds received for a totaled F-150 purchased out of federal asset forfeiture funds. It's $37,061. No county funds are requested. The next item is also within federal asset forfeiture funds. And this budget amendment is to budget additional funding for informant funds, telephone subpoenas, payout of comp time for accrued comp time over 80 hours for detention officers that were covering additional shifts due to the fiscal year 20 staff shortages and staffing required for the Bertie Detention Center for Nash County inmates. The amendment also includes funding for a K-9 to replace Bosch, who was retired in 2019, and additional funds from insurance proceeds to replace a total vehicle within the additional funds to add to a vehicle in the general fund. It's requesting $82,240, and no county funds are requested.
Let me hold up right there a moment. Any questions on any of those items under the Sheriff Department by Commissioner? Okay, good. Go ahead.
The next item is with County Capital. This amendment is to correct the funding request for Spring Hope playground equipment. The winning bid with Site Concepts was for $49,983, and the budget amendment that I presented in January 2020 was for $49,493. I'm making a correction to my amendment of $490. So it's requesting a fund balance appropriation of $490 to complete the payment of the equipment with Site Concepts. And the final item that I have is with disaster recovery. This budget amendment is to activate the accounting mechanism and initial funding needed to properly designate the county's expenses during COVID-19 emergency operations. These costs need to be tracked for reimbursement considering a formal disaster declaration has been made. An estimate of the actual cost is yet to be determined. Initially, we were going to allocate $50,000 to cover personnel supply costs for the emergency response, and these would cover Category B for emergency protective measures and for Category Z for management costs. But as we've continued on with the emergency, I would like to change my initial request to $100,000 from fund balance appropriation. And we are anticipated, we're working with federal and state funding, so these funds should be fully reimbursed to the county.
Any questions on that one? All right. That's 5 budget amendments. Any commissioner have any question on either of them? If not, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval.
Moved by Commissioner Richardson. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? 5 budget amendments stand approved. Thank you, Ms. Wood. Next item on the agenda is our monthly board appointments, and at this time, I'd ask Stacy to enter the chambers to make a presentation on those. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for all you've done getting us ready today.
No problem.
Really?
No
Well, I
problem.
didn't do it on my own, for sure. You know that. Janice. where
Somebody
are you,
got to lead the
Janice?
troops.
Janice, and certainly Jonathan Edwards is to thank for having us ready to roll this way this morning. We do have a couple of board appointments for you all to consider. The first is for the Nash County Board of Adjustments. There are 2 members for the Board of Adjustments whose terms expire on April 30th, 2020. The current board chairman, James Mack Tilley, has declined to serve an additional term, and Kenneth Mullen is eligible, willing, and recommended for reappointment by the planning director, Adam Tyson. Mr. Tyson makes the following recommendations: to promote Dennis Ray Cobb from alternate member 1 to regular member to replace Mr. Tilley. His second recommendation is to reappoint Kenneth Mullins to promote him from alternate member number 2 to alternate member number 1 to replace Mr. Cobb. His third recommendation is to promote Brandon Moore from alternate member number 3 to alternate member number 2 to replace Mr. Mullen. And then his fourth recommendation would be to appoint a new candidate to serve as alternate member number 3 to replace Mr. Moore. I've provided you with information about the current membership and the districts that they represent, and you have that information there. And another note to make is that with Mr. Tilley leaving the board, there will be no more members appointed for Commissioner Districts 2, 3, or 6. So I think the recommendation for the new candidate would be that they come from one of those 3 unrepresented districts.
Everybody understand that? All right, we can do this in one action, I think, can we not, if the board pleases to?
Right, and if I have not heard, haven't heard from anyone if somebody has a candidate to put in that alternate 3-member position. If not, I can bring that back to the board next month.
All right, I think that's what we would do then.
Okay.
Entertain a motion to approve this recommendation from Mr. Tyson.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Leggett. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Wells. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Motion stands approved, and that, you would note, Commissioners, those districts, and we'll try to come up with someone in the next month to put back in there if you 3 would coordinate with one another. It would be number 3 alternate, so there would not be a whole lot to do for a while. I think they have pretty good attendance at those Board of Adjustments. So if someone's concerned about the time factor, I think it would be very little involved if you could find someone. All right?
Okay.
Go ahead.
The next is for the Tourism Development Authority, the TDA. The Tourism Development Board has 5 members whose terms expire on April 30th. Terms for Faye Bedingfield, Zach, you can help me, Mr. Davis.
Dorovic is how he pronounced it.
Dorovic, okay.
I'm a little bit behind on my iPad where you're at, but go ahead.
Okay, Lydia Davis and Bill Lennis expire, and they are not eligible for reappointment. They have all served 3 terms and need to be replaced. The term for Wayne Murphy expires, however, he is eligible for reappointment. And you also had an application attached in your packet, which is a recommendation from Commissioner Belfield for Purcell Kelly.
All right, it's unfortunate that we have this many on this board to come up at one time, and some of them, actually, 2 of them are collectors, so I've got to get busy and find 2 more collectors. I do have someone for Bill's seat identified and have talked to her. I do not have her application yet, but it's coming, so I would like to defer that one to next month, and that would fill a position of someone in the tourism business because the person is also in a restaurant business like Bill was. And then we have 2 collectors, so again, I'd request the board to think, and if you know of anyone that either works at a hotel or has ownership in a local hotel, to let me know who those are, because they are a little bit hard to come up with. We just filled a couple of seats, but we'll get busy and fill these 2. These board members will continue to serve until we replace them. So our busy meeting is in May anyway to approve the budget, so we would have those back to work through the budget, and Faye and in fact, all of those have always been really involved in helping get the budget approved, so it doesn't concern me a whole lot that we would have them for 1 more month. And I think Mr. Belfield would have a little bit of notice. I gave him a notice, but didn't give my own self notice. I came up with someone, if you would present that person for Ms. Davis, Mr. Belfield.
Yes, I have recommended here fellow commissioners Purcell Kelly, and he lives at 218 Mansfield Drive in Rocky Mount. He's an educator. He does quite a bit of volunteer work in the community, especially working with the young people. And I think he was excited when I approached him. He said, glad to serve.
Glad to have it.
Because he wants to be even more involved in community service.
Okay, all right. If we could, then I'd entertain a motion to approve Mr. Kelly and the other one was Wayne Murphy in one motion, if we could do that. Wayne would be appointed to an additional term. He is employed at Southern Bank, lives here in Nashville, and then the one that Mr. Bellfield brought forward. Yeah, a motion for approve those two.
I make a motion
I offer
to
a
approve.
motion to approve those
All
three.
right. I'll take Mr. Bellfield's motion. Dan could be a second.
Second, yep.
Any questions on that motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign. And again, if you would help identify someone for the other 3 seats. We're now moving on to item number 15, which is the monthly tax report, and I would think we have Doris Sumner out. There she is, coming in the room at this time. You do ever retire, Mr. Lamb? I think we found you a part-time job.
He's got a new job.
Good morning, Ms. Sumner.
Good morning. Yes, at this time, I'd like to present the monthly tax report. As you know, in general, keeping with general statute, the tax collector will be providing a monthly report showing the amount of taxes collected and efforts being made to collect those taxes. It is designed to keep the board abreast of activities in the tax office, and as you know, it's for informational purposes only and does not require approval. It is recommended that you accept the report so that it be noted in the minutes. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any questions on the report? Well, I will say no questions. We will accept the report then. Next item is number 16, which is the tax refunds. Did you have any, Doris, this month on tax refunds?
Yes, sir, we do. We have a couple of refunds that we need approval on so that we can disperse those funds.
All right, you see those in your agenda. Any questions on the refunds? Not to entertain a motion for approval.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Bellfield. There's a second. Second by Commissioner Outlaw. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Tax refunds stand approved.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here this morning. Mr. Lamb, do you know if Mr. Hill got back in town? Is Mr. Hill out there?
No, sir, not yet.
Not yet, okay. I know he was out of town and was going to come back. May have moved a little faster than he anticipated.
Mr. Chairman, I believe Trey Wright
It's going,
is here.
okay, all right.
No, sir, he's not back yet.
Okay,
He
good.
said a few minutes ago he'd be here in 20 minutes. So we can either ask Mr. Fisher to come in and give his report, or if you all would like to take a short break.
I've heard 3 take a break from commissioners, so I think at this time I would take a short break, and we will reconvene when Mr. Hill
Okay,
shows up. Just please let us know.
I will let you know.
Thank you. All right, we're in recess for a few moments. And we are now on item number 17 on the agenda, which is a public health proclamation. And I'll be delighted to have Mr. Bill Hill, our health director, to make this proclamation, and welcome, sir. I know you've been a busy man. Glad to have you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We have been busy again this morning, and we'll talk about that on the next agenda item, if we could. You received this public health proclamation in essence of time. I won't read every word of it unless you would prefer that I do that. I know that's the general or traditional way to do that, but it is the 25th year that National Public Health Week has been recognized, and even Public Health Month. This has been recognized since 1995. There's been a lot of issues that have been discussed in this proclamation that you can see. Life expectancy decreases, a lot of obesity issues, and things that we don't necessarily come together to celebrate, but to take recognition of a lot of work that still needs to be done outside of coronavirus and the crisis pandemic that we're dealing with today. We obviously am very much involved in these kinds of issues that this proclamation alludes to, in this particular case, measles, but other natural disasters that public health certainly needs to take the front line in a very active position on.
Mr. Hill, do you, when you get to the point, I think it'd be appropriate for you to read the proclamation.
Okay.
Under the current circumstances.
Okay, just as it's written.
As it's written, if you don't mind, sir.
Yes, sir, be glad to. I was summarizing that, but whereas the week of April 6th through 12th, 2020 is National Public Health Week, and the theme is the 25th year, looking back and moving forward. Whereas since 1995, the American Public Health Association, through the sponsorship of National Public Health Week, has educated the public, policymakers, and public health professionals about important and improving public health issues. Whereas the United States life expectancy has decreased in recent years, and the 3-year drop represents the longest sustained decline in expected lifespan since the Great Recession. Further studies consistently show that the United States has a lower life expectancy than comparable countries. Whereas there is significant difference in health status, such as obesity, poor mental health, and drug use, among people living in rural areas compared with people living in urban areas. And this variance increases because of rural areas, or the rural residents are more often faced with social detriments that negatively impact on health, such as poverty, transportation barriers, lack of economic opportunity. And whereas public health professionals help communities prevent, prepare for, withstand, and recover from the impact of a full range of health threats, including disease outbreaks such as measles, natural disasters, and disasters caused by human activity. And whereas public health action together with scientific and technological advances has played a major role in reducing and in some cases eliminating the spread of infectious disease and establishing today's disease surveillance and control systems. And whereas 60% of Americans live with a preventable chronic disease and health risks such as alcoholism, obesity, and tobacco use are the primary reasons for 7 out of every 10 deaths annually in the United States that could be preventable, in other words. Now, therefore, it be resolved that the Nash County Board of Commissioners does hereby proclaim the week of April 6, 12, 2020 as National Public Health Week 2020 in Nash County, and calls upon the people of Nash County to observe this week by helping our families, friends, neighbors, co-workers, and leaders better understand the value of public health, supporting great opportunities, and to celebrate public health's accomplishments in light of this year's theme, the 25th year, looking back and moving forward, adopted this 6th day of April 2020. Chairman, Mr. Robbie B. Davis, County Commissioners, and Janice Evans, Ms. Evans, as clerk to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. I thought it was important enough to go through that whole proclamation, and main reason I wanted to was the next to last one. If you would read that whereas 60% one more time for the public, I'd appreciate it.
I think
That's startling.
I think that is so tremendously important, and this time I'll read it a little slower. Thank you for ruminating over that very thing and talking about that, because it is so true. Whereas 60% of Americans live with a preventable chronic disease, and health risks such as alcoholism, obesity, and tobacco use are the primary reasons for 7 of every 10 deaths annually in the United States. That's not even talking about morbidity, illnesses that are related to it, but actual deaths.
Right. That's an amazing number, though.
It really is. It really is. And I think therein lies the issues of take control of a lot of things that have to do with your own health.
Absolutely. And hopefully, we're all understanding that something's good is going to come out of what we've been dealing with here the last month, and maybe it will give people a chance to reflect on that and take better care of themselves moving forward. I would sure hope.
I sure hope so, too.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions on this proclamation? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Have a motion by Commissioner Combs. Is there a second?
Second.
Have many seconds, probably about 6 more. So all in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign. Proclamation stands approved, Mr. Hill, and couldn't have come at a better time. While you're in the room, item 18 is a public update on where we are with COVID-19. And pleased to have you make that request at this time, and I'm sure the public is anxiously waiting to hear what you got to say this morning, sir.
Thank you, sir. You know, this is a relatively brief history of coronavirus, recently known as COVID-19 because of 2019, when this disease was recognized. Don't know exactly how long it's been around, from China to the European countries to United States. But it's been a relatively brief history in the United States with Seattle and, of course, the epicenter there in New York, and hopefully that's phasing off. But North Carolina and right here in Nash County, I think our first case was around March the 16th or 17th, right around St. Patrick's Day, not even a month ago. And incidentally, that first case individual has recovered totally. And I think the really, really important thing to emphasize about that was that this particular individual went into this virus as a very healthy person, exercised, was very health conscious, and told me last week he had just ridden the bikes 3 or 4 miles. So he has recovered. And pardon me for just distinguishing the gender, but nevertheless, this person has recovered. But it's a brief history in Nash County, not even a month old, and we, as of today, stand at 22 cases. We had 18 going into the weekend. We received 3 over Friday night into early Saturday morning, and did well yesterday with no cases, but we did have a case that we received last night, made the 22nd case. I think the interesting point about 22 cases, we've tested about 58 to 60 at the health department, but throughout Nash County, about 325 or 6 have been tested for coronavirus as I speak, and we're going to test 3 more today, so you'd add 3 to that. But only 22 have been positive of the 325 or so that have been tested. So it's a relatively small percentage. Last week, it was running about 92 to 95% negatives, only about a 5-6% positive rate of those tested. We have gotten into, in the last several days, a flurry of contacts, cases that associated with 1 or 2 individuals that we were highly suspicious of with the contacts. This particular one overnight is in a small group home. I think it's safe to say that. And it's small in that we're talking about less than 10. And I think we can already get in there and contain what's going on there and deal with contacts in a fairly effective and efficient way, but mostly effective way. The number of cases in Nash County that have required hospitalization has been larger than we've seen nationwide and in the state. But again, at some points, it was 45 to 50% of our cases were hospitalized. But again, if you look at these individual cases, they went into this disease phase with underlying conditions. Most of them did at least, and most of them were elderly. So these factors, high-risk factors, did really play a part in their disease phase and will in their recovery and prognosis as we go through it. Mr. Lamb had referred to a Washington study yesterday, University of Washington study, that talks about the peak coming. They reduced some of the numbers for North Carolina. And I think I would like to pause just a second with the 22 cases we have as I speak to talk about the really, really good things our citizens have done. I am so proud that it's not just public health. It's really the credit, the kudos go to the leadership in this room, the leadership with the municipalities and out in the county, and the citizens who have adhered, really taking it seriously. I know we see some individuals that are still gathering and still going about business as they normally would, but by and large, people are adhering to this. And I think the containment of this virus to 22 cases has largely been responsible for containment and mitigation that we've been involved with in public health, but our citizens have really taken the frontline view on this. So I'm pleased to say that this University of Washington study talked about a peak possibly coming, a plateau peak coming possibly by the end of April, maybe by April 27th. I know that's a projection. I know no one can really count on that very day. And the death toll was projected at 1,700, reduced in North Carolina. That's a lot of people when they're grandmamas and aunts and uncles and people we know and neighbors. That's a lot of people. There's no way to dismiss that. But we certainly do want these people to go into, if they contract it, and we know the best way not to contract it, avoid it, try to stay at distance from it. But if they do contract it, to come out of this at least as a case that has survived it rather than have a mortality associated or related death. You've heard something about some drugs that are out there. The vaccine is a ways off. You've heard a year, but maybe by the end of this calendar year. I'm sure the United States, with the partner countries, will come up with a prophylactic vaccine like we take in the fall of the year for flu. I'm really sure that the scientists and the great intelligent science and medical community research groups will come up with a vaccine. And you've heard of some treatment from antivirals like the hydroxychloroquine that is used with lupus and malaria and has been used in some of these cases. I would say I think the jury is still out on a lot of issues with that particular drug. It's certainly worth some trials and some effort to see if that can be effective in the treatment of this particular virus. You know that we've done drive-through. That's a more casual way to express it, but that's the way we are actually testing for coronavirus. With drive-through, the patient never gets out of the car. We're totally suited up with personal protective gear, equipment with the shield, the mask, and the gown. And we have our nurse to do the nasal swabs to pull the test right in the car. It's a relatively quick test. We have received more tests over probably Friday, at least 36 more tests, and we are equipped to be able to do several if we need to, in the double digits if we have to. I did call, I have had ongoing communication and conversations with Lee Isley, Dr. Isley over at UNC Nash Hospital, and he assured me Friday that they still have a wing, beds in the tune of about 36 to 38 beds available for coronavirus patients. The ventilators are still available in our own hospital, so I felt at least good that a number of beds have been set aside and a number of issues have, and precautions and actually steps have been taken by our hospital to deal with the ill patients as they start to come in even at a more increased rate. Without any further ado, I'd be glad to just try to answer any questions. This is a very contagious virus, and some figures have given it up to 10 times more contagious. And I think that's largely because it is a novel virus. It's one that we don't have a natural immunity built up for, like many other kinds of viruses that come along. We just have no real natural immunity. So that's why it's so extremely contagious at this point. And the hopes are that this virus will not mutate and become even more serious than it has. It's been serious enough for enough people, but hopefully it won't become even more serious.
Any questions of Mr. Hill? You got him right here in front of you, and he's the man in the know. Feel free to ask him. Mr. Belfield?
Ms. Hill, and you may have said it, I missed it, you were coming in kind of low to me. But do you have any idea of the origin of the people in Nash County where they came down with this virus? Is it results of traveling, or did it happen right in the community?
Yes, sir. We do have a really pretty good idea of each individual case. The demographics of the first case, for example, was a travel-related case. The one that, well, I don't do too many identifying factors where it's been broadcast, but some that have been very ill had international travel. And then some have been just contacts that we didn't know where they came from. Contacts that took place, we knew they were close contacts, and we knew that when the symptoms started with their contacts to test them. But, and then there's been something called community spread. You've heard that term, community spread. And really what I can tell you about that is you don't know where it comes from. When community spread, you can't really pinpoint it to, I had a trip to an Asian country, or to a country where it's extremely endemic like Italy, or a cruise ship, or a contact that I know right here that had the virus, had coronavirus. Community spread is simply when you don't know they came out, the onset of the virus started, they were tested positive, and you can't state exactly where it did come from. But that's not real unusual. How many times does a person get the flu or bad cold, and you want to blame somebody if you possibly can, but you really don't know a lot of times where it came from. So that's not all that unusual. It's called community spread when you simply cannot pinpoint the travel or the contact. Mm-hmm. But we do know age, we do know gender, we do know geography, we do know their household contacts, and we do know where they've been recently. We sent out one of those infographics the other day that was a little bit harsh. We debated that, and we called it tough love in a way of speaking, but it talked about if public health knocked on your door and you said you were positive, would you know who you had talked with in the last 10 days and where you've been in the last day? Would you be proud of your answer? Like Mr. Lamb would. He has stayed pretty much at home. He really has, except when he had to go out. He's really stressed that among county workers and the general public. But there are a number of contacts that you might have a difficult time recalling in the last 10 days of places you've been. I know I would, for example, to some degree.
Have you had any reports of violations of assembly, like large?
Well,
Crowds.
you did see one in Edgecombe County.
Yeah,
I think.
I'm familiar with that one, but I was
And-
just wondering here in Nash County.
Well, we are hearing of them, and that was extremely egregious when you see 80 people gathering without any regard for the sensitivity of what's going on in your community. It's a callous gesture in many ways. But yes, we have had reports in some of our stores, in particular sections of our stores. Folks are wanting to do gardening. Folks are wanting to get out in the yard, and that's not a bad thing. They probably need that from a mental health standpoint, and they're pretty isolated and good ventilation. That's not a bad thing to get out and walk or exercise or work in the yard. But in some of the stores where they're buying some of these items, we have had some congestion. I think the stores have really started dealing with that in the last couple of days. I've seen some of the bigger stores like Target and Walmart start to limit the number, starting to flow in one direction in an aisle instead of meeting people in the aisle. So I think the stores are really trying to address that the best they can. And
Yeah.
speaking of stores and the economy, I mean, what else can happen worse in that regard for the economy and unemployment?
Yeah, I noticed the stores are beginning, those that are open, are beginning to follow suggestions that they've had to try to slow this virus down. Because some, I haven't read of it here in our area, but about churches, some of them think that they can, since I'm in God's house, that I can have a huge congregation. But I read about one minister being arrested for that, and then the arrested sheriff being criticized that we're trying to dictate where you can worship and religion. And I think one good answer to that is each individual use their own common sense. And we ought to encourage that, because you never know, you may have some ministers in the area that feel that since we're in God's house, we're okay. But people can bring it in when they come, and it'll affect others. So we're not trying to close churches down, but at least we need to tell people to use your own common sense for your own safety and health.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of, and I don't want to go too far with this, but what my mother used to say about God expects us to use good intelligence too.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mr. Hill at this time? Ms. Leggett?
Mr. Hill, you mentioned that you think that Nash County residents are doing a good job at staying home. Are there additional things that you think we should, additional steps we should take?
Well, I think we need to well, you know, the containment is such a big issue. The social distancing that we've talked about is key. It's really key. It's a good chance, even if I had coronavirus, you wouldn't catch it from me this morning. Good chance that Mr. Lamb, Mr. Cone probably wouldn't get it, because we're keeping a good distance. So that is such a key. Hand washing, we've talked about. I hope we come out of this with a whole new level of respect for hand washing. It's so important during flu season and just winter colds that we have, not to mention the different kinds of things that we see, like foodborne illnesses sometimes. So hand washing is so much important. And we do still have some issues that with people that are not observing this social distancing and not observing the more isolated kinds of activities without gatherings. But I think by and large, most of our folks have done well. And do we come out of this with an immunity to at least the ones that have contracted and a silver lining, a mild form like our first case, a mild form with a natural immunity to this? Hopefully so, hopefully so. But I think we can always do more, but I think that our folks have done reasonably well. It's really a game changer. It's a lifestyle change from what we've done for all these years, and then the last month, all of a sudden, we're not shaking hands, and we're bumping, and we're not getting close, and we're not getting in cars and carpooling, and it's been a game changer. And it takes a long time to break habits. I wish we could have done this with nutrition years ago and exercise years ago to break some of the habits, and saturated fats and some of the others. But folks have really had enough fear this time to serve as an impetus, a catalyst for changing lifestyle behavior to at least make this spread more difficult.
Mr. Chairman, when everyone's finished, I have a comment.
Go ahead, sir.
Could I make one comment?
Absolutely.
I just want to say, Mr. Hill, that I've always considered you to be one of the busiest people in Nash County. I think your responsibilities are extremely significant, and I just think they're even more so at this particular point in time. And I want you to know it means a lot to me, and I'm sure to this entire board, that you've taken time away from that schedule to come give us this report this morning. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, and that would not even have been a conscious choice. That was automatic
Thank
that
you,
I would
sir.
come before this board.
Very much appreciated.
Yes. You're all my superiors, and I respect that.
Other comment from commissioners?
I just think we want to thank you and your employees for all you do, and I really do like the updates. It keeps us informed, and we're just praying for you and pray it soon goes away.
Thank you for bringing up the employee part. I'm just the spokesperson. I'm just the guy that's giving the report. My job is made a lot easier by the truly, truly dedicated people we have. And that's not just the health department, it's all over Nash County. You see it at the top, you see it all the way through the rank and file of Nash County employees. But I really do appreciate it. These public health people, nurses and management support and environmental folks, and we're changing a little bit what we're starting to think about with inspection of restaurants, going in these places, but we're addressing some of those issues now. But 5 o'clock doesn't mean anything. It really, really doesn't. And Saturdays and Sundays, as Mr. Lamb has said, this virus doesn't take a vacation, all of a sudden knock off at 5, or say it's Saturday and Sunday, or a Good Friday coming up. We're going to stay vigilant and try to stay on it. And I don't have to stay behind our staff. They're ready to go. They realize, I talked about it in a staff meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is our time. This is our opportunity. This is the place where we have to be on the front line. We really have to be out there. This is an opportunity. Quite frankly, I wouldn't want to be on the sideline of this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said your staff make it easy for you, but leadership is what bring those things about. The leadership, you don't have good leadership at the top, it tends to decrease the ability, well, not necessarily the ability, but the accomplishments of the staff. And so when the staff is doing well, it's some good leadership at the top. And you have exemplified that. And I'll say this, sometime I see him at night going to the Y to exercise when I'm coming out. He only have 30 minutes. I said, gee. He said, man, I just got out of some meetings, but I'm going to get in what little bit I can. And one night I went to Harris Teeter. I looked up, I said, there's a man walking brisk down through the parking lot. And I said, that's Bill Hill. So I waited until he got there. He said, well, didn't have a chance to do it anywhere else. I might as well do it here. So
Wow.
he keeps his exercise going wherever. And, I like that. I used to work like that too. I didn't let 5 o'clock bother me. If work needed to be done, I did it. I stayed with it until we got it accomplished. And to me, some won't say that reflects a good leader, but I'll say it. I've seen people working, and when 4 o'clock come, every now and then I see them looking at waiting for that 5 to come. And when 5 o'clock come, they walk right out the door and shut up. But if work need to be done, I believe in sticking with it. And you have exemplified that here in Nash County to me.
Thank you, Mr. Bellfield. Mr. Lamb, you had a comment, I think, sir.
Yeah, I have some comments in manager's report for later regarding our staff generally, but since Mr. Hill is here, I do want to say that in my 31 and a half years in county government and in government generally, that I am so thankful that Nash County at this moment has a man with Mr. Hill's commitment, his experience, his knowledge, and his accessibility. We have these daily briefings, as y'all are aware. He is always the first one on the list. He is keeping the public informed. He's keeping the commissioners informed. He's keeping the press informed, therefore the public. And I've dealt with 4 or 5 health directors in my life, and they were all very good, effective health directors. But none of them compare to Bill Hill, and I forbid him from returning such comments to me right now. Thank you.
I want y'all all to know you're walking all over my closing speech that I had for today. Get it done early, it's quite all right. Sure is. Mr. Hill, anything else from you, sir, this morning?
I would, and this comes across just so much like an employee is bootlicking and just trying to say nice things to his superiors, but I would be remiss to say that the leadership in this room among our elected and our highest appointed officials could go unmatched anywhere in this state. It couldn't be a better environment to work than Nash County. And I know you can look at me and tell that I really mean that. And it's because of each and every one of you. I could come to you and talk with you, and you're so extremely supportive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and
Thank you.
I'll keep calling that number at 11 o'clock each night, see if you answer so I can send you home like I've been doing quite a bit.
Yeah, you got me on one of those comments last week, didn't you, Mr.
I
Chairman?
did, yep, I sure did, but I'm gonna keep checking them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move now to item on the agenda. Our last scheduled item is number 19, which is emergency management update. And I would think Mr. Brent Fisher is patiently waiting right on. He's been there all morning. Here he comes. Mr. Hill went out that door, so you can come in that door, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
Morning. Looked mighty sharp this morning. He must have come straight from church.
He's on
I
camera.
had my wife help me this morning.
I appreciate that comment more than you know.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Lamb. staff, thank you for the opportunity to just brief you very briefly on activities that are taking place in emergency management. We have, in the emergency management in the fire marshal's office, our suite has been locked down to offer more protection for our staff, including 911 center. Our 911 center can be very vulnerable during the flu season, and especially now with COVID-19. So we, about a week ago, we locked down our main suite door just to try and limit the amount of staff and people coming in and out of our suite area, just to try and keep 911 as safe and healthy as possible. We also have adjusted office staff schedules in all three divisions, fire marshal, emergency management, 911, and EMS, to work from home when available. We have temporarily suspended maintenance inspections at commercial properties. The only time we're doing inspections right now is if it's a life safety type inspection, or if we've received some type of complaint, or it's a certificate of occupancy inspection. We are also only sending first responders on echo level calls, which is extremely high priority, example, cardiac arrest and respiratory arrest type calls. So we're trying to keep our first responders as safe and healthy as possible as well from our fire departments. We have approximately 43 personal protective equipment resources that we have requested into WebEOC, which is our state emergency management crisis management system that we use to communicate with state emergency management. So again, we have 43 requests in there for different types of personal protective equipment for different types of agencies. We continue planning and response efforts, and those consist daily of the county response meeting that Mr. Lamb facilitates at 11 o'clock every morning. We also, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we have a conference call with our, what we call our Central Branch North Carolina Emergency Management Office. We have weekly conference calls with the Public Health and Nash UNC Hospital, and a weekly conference call with the Healthcare Preparedness Coalitions across the state of North Carolina. We are preparing and disseminating situation reports daily to county stakeholders and to North Carolina Emergency Management. We have also prepared a virtual EOC with staff and partners by using Microsoft Teams for briefings and we've also collected cell phone numbers of the departments, and we try to do that 2 and 3 persons deep in the event we do have to stand up operational periods and have to get in touch with staff. We can do that by cell phone, but if we need to do some type of briefing, we can use the virtual Teams concept that we've been using at the 11 o'clock meetings. Mr. Brantley also wanted me to inform you of measures that are taking place in the 911 and EMS divisions. In 911, they have limited access to the 911 center to only 911 personnel. No others are allowed in the center at this time. They have established a table outside of the center door for outside agencies, mainly law enforcement, when they need to come up and drop off paperwork or things like that. All that paperwork and all that work is being done outside the center, and then one of the employees comes out and gathers that appropriate paperwork. Staff are doing self-monitoring of themselves before they leave home to make sure that they don't have a temperature to come to the center and possibly spread something to other workers. The staff are cleaning their workstations throughout the shift to try and keep it as clean as possible. The backup center over at EMS Station 800 on the hospital grounds has been sanitized, and we have limited access into that room from personnel from going in and out of that center. The main center here on the first floor will be sanitized tomorrow, and staff will be working from the backup center tomorrow while that takes place. Meeting with supervisory staff has been held by using also the Microsoft Teams platform. There's also, we want to thank our Jonathan Boone and Mike Phillips for their diligent work on establishing and installing some curtains between our consoles in our 911 center that offer some barriers in our 911 center to try and keep it as clean and healthy as possible as well. And we're working with other public safety answering points, other 911 centers, to develop a plan should staff get sick and we drop below minimum staffing levels for someone to continue to answer those 911 calls, which is so vital. In EMS, I'm finishing up here screening all patients and having only one crew member, when they respond to a call, they approach the patient and assess the risk of what the nature of the call is. And then that determines what else needs to take place while they're there. All staff have N95 masks and eye protection issued to them. They're replaced or cleaned after every potential or confirmed exposure. Health screenings are taking place at shift change, much like 911 is doing. Crews are laundering exposed uniforms at the station, so that way they have clean uniforms and they're not carrying things home to their families. And we've dedicated full-time staff, Dale Griffin and Jeremy Bunn, working to support the crews with logistics, resources, and guidance. And the transport policy has been altered so all potential confirmed patients go to the closest hospital to reduce the crew's exposure time. So those are some of the things that we have taken place and the actions we're taking in our emergency services office with our emergency management, fire marshal division, 911, and also EMS. But we'd also like to share the same sentiments that Mr. Hill shared. We appreciate the support from the manager's office and from the board while we deal with COVID-19. So we appreciate all the support.
Thank you, sir. Comments or questions of Mr. Fisher while he's with us this morning?
You had any of our paramedics, EMTs, anybody have the virus?
Currently, we do not. No, sir.
Other questions?
I have a comment. Yes, sir.
I appreciate you being here today. I listen to the updates every day that you make on behalf of emergency management.
Thank you.
And I know that if we'd asked Brian, Mr. Brantley to be here, or Mr. Struthy, or anybody else from your staff, they would be here to give us this update. It's very much appreciated. Thank you what you're doing on the front lines dealing with this issue.
And we appreciate it too. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Thank y'all very much.
Thank you.
Brief comment, if I could.
Sure, Mr.
Again, each day we have our daily briefing, and Mr. Fisher is always number 2 behind the health department, and we appreciate his reports. Of course, he puts out every day a what do you call it? Situation report. I believe all the commissioners are getting that.
We are.
That's very informative. He really puts everything together that's going on in county government as well as in the county, and I just appreciate his dedication, and the 911 operators, the EMS workers, they are on that front line like the health department and so many other agencies, and I just thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I would like to say that myself and Mr. Brantley and Scott Rogers, we meet constantly during the day to think about how we can continue our approach with everything that we're dealing with COVID-19. So things may change daily, but we're having those conversations and trying to stay ahead of the game there. But again, we appreciate all the support that everyone gives us.
I'd just like to say I love the way you do the report each day, particularly the fact that you color code what's new.
Right.
Which for someone that reads quite a bit in a day's time, it really helps us move through it. Now, I don't know who came up with that idea, but it's a wonderful idea.
Well, and that report is a report that the template, if you will, is what we use to deliver information to the state. What I'm giving you, usually what I give to the state is a one-pager. What I'm giving everybody is about 9 pages, but it's a lot of good, useful information that I'm hoping everybody can pick up from.
Cool.
So I don't like to cut things off just because I shared it during one situational report.
yeah.
I like to leave it up there for a day or two and then just highlight everything that's new, so.
You keep doing it like you're doing it. If you change it now, I'm gonna have trouble adjusting to it. But I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank y'all.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job. All right, we're now on item number 20, which is commissioner comments. Any commissioners have additional comments they'd like to make? Item number 21 is manager report. Mr. Lamb?
Yeah, I have a little bit here. Following along my last two comments, I cannot say enough about our county staff. They have responded with honor, commitment. They understand that local government is an essential player in this crisis, and that we are on the front line. Again, I want to thank the Health Department, 911, EMS, the Sheriff's Office, facility staff, including the custodians who are constantly going around and wiping down doorknobs and counters throughout our buildings. Also, the tax office, registered deeds office, planning department, veteran services, they are there to serve the public. We are using certain precautions, including the liners that have been installed in the 911 center that he spoke about. But we've put up liners, bathtub liners, throughout these county offices to separate the public, and also limited the number of people that can come into, like, the tax office and the register of deeds office. We've got a very committed staff. I do want you to know that where people can work from home, we are allowing them, whether it's a rotating basis or permanently part-time for the time being, working from home. We have over 100 laptops for the DSS workers. We had 35 internal. They were given to us by the elections department. We changed the hard drives and put in new hard drives, and they're being used. We also rented from Raleigh, a vendor in Raleigh, 70 laptops for a very reasonable monthly charge, less than $100. I think it's like $75 per laptop per month. And that is allowing those DSS workers to work at home. Their offices often are right beside each other, so we're trying to space that out. And people need to understand that the DSS workers cannot quit working. The state and federal government has given some consideration to renewals and recertifications to allow those not to be in person, but rather on the phone, online, or delayed for a month or two. And that's been a big help, and we thank the federal and state partners that we have. Some DSS workers do have to work through a crisis like this, such as Child Protective Services, Adult Protective Services. We cannot ignore those kind of complaints when they come to our attention. Also, the Food and Nutrition Division is having a lot of new applications because of layoffs, because of various reasons, but we have seen a spike in food and nutrition applications, and DSS is having to deal with that. This crisis requires shared sacrifice, and I can tell you that our county employees understands this is not business as usual, and are limiting purchases to essential items needed to respond to this crisis, as well as other essential items necessary for their department. As y'all know, since March the 11th, we've had a daily briefing. We've got about 80 people on our list now that are invited each day. They usually occur at 11 o'clock, except on Sundays at 2 o'clock. And today, we're having it at 2 o'clock because of this meeting. Lastly, I want to say with all sincerity that when you look at our response and who's involved in our response, that all our employees are essential employees, and that's how we've classified them. If I don't want any employee in this county government to think that we don't consider them essential. They are essential. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lamb. I did have quite a few comments I was going to make myself in closing, but I'm going to forego the majority of them because the majority of them have been spoken. And it was, of course, along the line of thanking the management, manager, his staff, and all the employees for what they have done the last month. It's really been amazing, to be honest with you. Our board has stated each year during our State of the County speech how proud we were of Nash County, how great employees we had, what great department heads we had. And we didn't think a time like this would come when we made those comments, but we should always expect things of this nature. And they have just risen to the level that this board already had them placed at, I think. I hope quite a few of the department heads are watching this morning, and on behalf of the board, I'm not going to start naming names because I don't think it's anyone that works for us that hadn't been very important. Mr. Hill certainly came in this morning, and he should know how we all feel about him already, but certainly what he's done. And our manager, quite frankly, with the reports he's put together, what he has our staff doing each day, I look at the computer quite a bit because all of you know I sleep little but read a lot. And there's not another county that's doing anything near what we're doing in Nash County. I get many comments from our taxpayers about being proud of what our staff is doing. And it's every department, quite frankly, from the health department to the sheriff's department, particularly the managers and his people up here, but no one's left out. No one is sitting on the sideline. This board, all of y'all have been very attentive to the things we needed to take care of. And I said it, I think, about the first daily update he had, that the commissioner's role in this was to just sit and monitor what the staff done, and if they need us, they call us. And they don't call much because they really know what to do. A few times they've asked a few questions, but I think our part, for the most part, has been just to observe what's going on and be proud of the staff that we have in Nash County. I do have a couple of things in logistics moving forward. Mr. Lamb and I discussed earlier this morning at length about our retreat, which we had scheduled for the 14th. We have decided between us that we are going to delay that simply because the number of people it would take in and out of the room. He has assured me that we could delay it as much as a month, maybe 5 weeks if we had to, and still meet budget deadlines that we are faced with. We generally, as you know, approve our budget in early June. We're only required to approve it in the month of June. He thought, and I agree with him 100%, that the later we wait to approve it, the more knowledge we're going to have of where we really are, which is going to be very important as it relates to revenue and so forth. We have not determined that date yet. We will have our regular meeting in May, which I I have forgot the date, I had it wrote here, May the 4th. It looks like is when we will have our next regular first of the month meeting. We will have at that time when in May we'd be doing that. And I'm sure we're still going to be in a format very similar to what we have got here today. I do need, we're going into a closed session, and we've got quite a few items in closed session, so I think we may be there a little while, personnel type matters and a few other things. But I do need, as Mr. Outlaw and I determined last Monday, we are going to need to have a telephonic meeting as quick as we can after tonight. I do expect some significant action tonight at the school board meeting. If it comes through like we anticipate it will, what we need to do is take some action on the Northern Nash Elementary School as soon as we can. And so Mr. Lamb has decided the best time to do it, to give them time to set it up, would be Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Is there anyone that has a conflict this Wednesday at 2 o'clock where you couldn't make a phone call from wherever you might be? I'll give you just a moment to make sure of that, because we could set it any time, but we just thought 2 o'clock Wednesday would be best. Any objection to that? Seeing none?
Talking about the 15th.
No,
No, I'm sorry, 8th.
yes, sir, that would be the 8th, I think, at 2
Yeah,
o'clock.
8th.
And you just be calling the phone number that the clerk will be giving us between now and that time on a conference call. And we will also provide that number to the public as well as the media, so if they wish to tune in, they could. The action that we would be taking, and I'm not going to get into a lot of details because at this point, the school board has not met, but we just need to be prepared, would be along the line of moving the project to the next stage, which would be to employ an architect that the school board would be selecting to do the design for the school. And the hopes are after our meeting on Wednesday that Wayne and I attended in person. I know several of you were online also during that meeting interviewing the architects. We anticipate having their decision after the meeting tonight. And so that's the action we'd be taking. Another item on the agenda would be addressing the Cummings report that they worked on. And again, I'm not going to get into a lot of detail on that, but there would be some action on this board to address that and where they are with that particular thing on their agenda and the cost involved in that to date. I would like to talk to the board about that some also, if their action comes through like I think it will. And that would be, I'd love to tell you more, but I just don't want to get ahead of the school board in their part.
Is it related to the so-called, what they say, consolidation of the three elementary schools in the Northwest?
No.
I'm talking about the attendance now. It has nothing to do with that. Okay.
No, sir, it does not. It does not. The Cummings report, if you recall, was a management firm they were going to utilize to do quite a bit of work. They have changed direction on that, and I want to up-to-date the board on the direction that I think they'll be going in. And I think the board will be pleased with the action that I anticipate them taking. But I'm very nervous about saying too much until it happens. Can I say that anybody, Mr. Outlaw? You were present?
Perfect.
Okay. So those will be the two items that we would deal with or have the privilege to deal with, I hope, on Wednesday at a 2 o'clock telephone conference. And looking at my notes, again, I want to say one more time and ask the board if they wouldn't mind giving our whole Nash County staff an applause for what has been going on for the last 30 days. Appreciate every one of you. With that said, if there's no other comments, I would...
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am. Excuse me, Ms. Wells, I didn't mean to get by you.
that's all right. I just, I've seen it on Facebook. I just want, since we have an audience, remember you need to shop local. Nash County needs your tax dollars to help pay our employees, to keep the sheriff's department keeps going. You know, it's nice sometimes to go to other places, but right now, Nash County needs your money. If you're going to shop, shop in Nash County. Thank you.
I think that was very, very appropriate, and put in a way that everybody ought to understand that I did see your comment on Facebook, and it's well taken. That should really be year-round, but particularly with what we're expecting now, because we know we're going to have a significant drop in revenue, as everybody is. But there again, to me, that's why this board has been so protective of fund balance over the years, many years past, because this is when we would utilize quite a bit of that, I'm sure. The items we have for a closed session today are along economic development, along the matters of attorney-client privilege, and also we have a couple of personnel matters that we would be dealing with also. So we will go into closed session when I call for a motion of it, and then we'll come out for the benefit of the press into another open session, and we will recess that open session until Wednesday at 2 o'clock for a phone call. And I would anticipate that would be the last meeting we would have in April, unless something comes up that this board needs to take action on. Mr. Lamb, have I left out anything?
No, sir.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session at this time.
So move.
Moved by Mr. Bellfield, is there a second?
Second.
Any questions on the motion?
Would you expect any action out of closed session?
Mr. Outlaw, I don't know that I know everything that's on the agenda under matters of attorney-client privilege, so I honestly don't have a good answer for that. To my knowledge, not, but I certainly wouldn't want to keep
But if
him
we did,
in
we
one.
could contact them like we normally do.
We could indeed, we could let them know, because I do think it'll take a little bit of time to get through a couple of items on there. All in favor of the motion to go into closed session, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed by a like sign? I'm going to also call for about a 10-minute recess to allow staff to be sure they put us in the closed session. We are going to stay into this room and lock the front doors, I think is what I understand. And if Mr. Edwards and staff would double check, triple check to be sure we are in closed session from an audio standpoint, I would greatly appreciate it, because we do have a couple of real sensitive matters we'd be dealing with. Stand in recess. Thank you.